Hi, it's Carl Brower, and I'm standing next to the 2025 Lexus IS 500 F Sport. We're going to jump into this vehicle and check it out, see how it's holding up after, well, let's be honest, a long time in existence. Probably the most important thing to keep in mind with the current Lexus IS is that it's sitting on a 12-year-old chassis. This car was last redesigned in 2014, which is really an eternity in modern day automotive engineering. Now, why would Lexus do that? Why would they keep producing the same car for 12 years? Well, probably because the SUV dominance of today's market means that's where all the action is and that's where all the profit is. And if they do a business case study on this vehicle and look at what it's going to take investment-wise to redesign it and how long that payback is going to come, they're probably not incentivized to redesign the vehicle. So here we are in a 12-year-old Lexus. And what does that mean? Well, it means that maybe the chassis could be a little stiffer and maybe even a little lighter. Although, interestingly, all the things they're piling into modern cars, like hybrid drivetrains, means even if you're getting a lighter chassis design, you end up with a heavier total curb weight because of all that extra battery packs and electric motors. So this car is still extremely light by today's standards, even with this supposedly old chassis design. It also means that you end up with a lower price and more standard features in this car when you look at it versus competitors like the 3 Series and the C-Class. And of course, this one has a naturally aspirated V8, something you can't get in any of the other vehicles in this category. And probably the most important thing, anyone who knows me knows this is huge for me, hydraulic assisted steering. Yes, it's got real steering feel. It's not trying to be figured out by a coder as to what the steering should feel like because there's an electric motor helping you out. It's got an actual mechanical connection between this wheel and the front wheels, and that's where you get your steering feel. What's really great about a naturally aspirated V8 isn't just the sounds, although that is fabulous, but it's the broad torque band. You're going through corners, and with this car, you get these great paddle shifters, and you hardly need to use them really because you've got such a broad torque band with this V8 engine. Second gear pretty much handles you all the way through a tight set of twisties like this. Now, this particular Lexus IS that I'm driving right now has the special appearance package for 2025. There's only going to be 180 vehicles that you can get this on, and it costs $4,050. It includes 19-inch black alloy wheels, suede seat inserts, and special flare yellow paint. Actually, I think it even has a special key fob with some yellow stitching and a little yellow thread on it. And with that option added to this vehicle's starting price, which is over $60,000 with the IS 500 V8, it tops out at just over $69,000. You can get into these vehicles for much less. The starting price for a Lexus IS in 2025 is about $41,000. That's much cheaper than the equivalent Mercedes C-Class or BMW 3 Series. What's interesting about this Lexus IS is that it may be an old design, but it has features that I'm just as happy to see in modern cars, and a lot of them don't have. I mean, it's got the Mark Levinson audio system that Lexus has had in the past and always sounds great. It's got heated and cooled front seats, a heated steering wheel, different driver modes, just like all the modern cars. It's even got this very cool gauge cluster design where it'll change the whole layout of the gauge cluster depending on how you want it set up. It may not be the most cutting edge vehicle, but that doesn't mean it still isn't a desirable and fun vehicle to drive or even interact with inside this cabin. And that last item, all by itself, really makes the current Lexus IS very compelling to me. It still has a very functional and comfortable interior. It has better steering feel than all these newer cars with electric assist power steering, and it certainly has the best exhaust note of anything in the class because it still has a naturally aspirated V8. And really, when I think about it, chassis design, it just hasn't evolved that much since this car was redesigned. Yeah, they can get a little more strength and maybe a little less weight out of the chassis with modern designs, but is it really a vastly superior chassis compared to even 20 years ago? not in my opinion, and I've got enough seat time in old BMW E46s to know from which I speak. As I sit in this cabin, would I like to have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto? Would I appreciate a larger central touchscreen, maybe more interior storage cubbies and more rear seat legroom? And this Lexus touchpad, does it feel like a not particularly effective throwback that probably should have never happened in the first place? Yes to all of that. However, this touchscreen is quite effective. It's right below the windshield, and it is a touchscreen, so I can pretty much ignore this touchpad and not use it. There's really sufficient interior storage and rear legroom for most people. And let's be honest, USB-C cables, they're just not that expensive. While the IS 500, especially with this special appearance package, is the most expensive version, let's look at the entire IS model line because it's actually quite rich. You can get the IS 300, which is the base model with a 2-liter turbo 4, and it is available with all-wheel drive, and it has a 241 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque engine, gets to 60 miles per hour in about 6.9 seconds. Then you've got the IS 300 F Sport design, and you can also get that with all-wheel drive, and you can get it with a 3.5-liter V6, 260 horsepower, 236 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 in about 6.1 seconds. Then there's the IS 350 F Sport design, also available with all-wheel drive, a 3.5-liter V6, but this tune makes it have 311 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque, and it does 0 to 60 in about 5.6 seconds. The IS 500 that I'm driving, that's a 5-liter, 8-cylinder engine, 472 horsepower, 395 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 in about 4.3 seconds. You can only get the IS 500 with the V8 in rear-wheel drive. If you get an IS with rear-wheel drive, it'll have an 8-speed automatic, while the all-wheel drive versions use a 6-speed automatic. There's also a dynamic handling package available on the IS 350 F Sport models, and that same package comes standard on the IS 500, which again is only available in rear-wheel drive. And every IS 500 includes not just that package, but a sunroof and quad exhaust tips. Then there's a premium package that you can add, which gives you a Mark Levinson audio system, a 360 camera, and a rear sunshade. And that's really the advantage in a car like this Lexus IS. Yeah, I'm normally the first person to call out when a car's old and due for a redesign, but as I mentioned before, I don't think the redesigns really help that much in terms of performance or chassis development. They really haven't gone that far and evolved that much in the last 20 years. But conversely, what do you get with the newer cars? Electric assist power steering, hybrid drivetrains that add weight, no available V8, higher price tags. None of that stuff interests me, but that's what you're going to get on all of this car's competitors in a newer version. Personally, I'd rather stick with this car, and that's before you get into the traditional Toyota Lexus quality that's going to have this thing running for many, many years and probably at a much lower operating cost and unscheduled dealer visits than a lot of its competitors. I think this car is really compelling despite its age, actually maybe even because of its age, and if I was looking at an entry-level luxury vehicle, this would be very high on my list.